Hi, I'm Terry O'Sullivan from the Open University Business School. My PechaKucha talks about how working on FutureLearn massive open online courses, or MOOCs, has thrown new light, let's call it MOOClight, on learning and teaching for me personally. I hope that you too will find it illuminating. 2012, as you'll recall, was the year of the MOOC. The plan was to disrupt the excessive, exclusive and expensive world of higher education with short, accessible online courses open to all, free of charge. Those heady days. The revolution has not quite arrived, but a few things changed, including the way I think about teaching. The Open University was determined not to leave it all to the Americans. In December 2012, we launched FutureLearn, a wholly owned subsidiary, as a MOOC platform for the rest of us. 2012 was also the year UK tuition fees hit £9,000. MOOCs for free looked like an attractive prospect. FutureLearn's pedagogy is based on decades of Open University research into teaching and learning, supplemented by ideas from broadcasting, games, and social media. It's a private company jointly owned by the Open University and since April 2019, the Australian Employment Services Group, SEEK. The relationship between the OU and FutureLearn is a bit like Nestle and Nespresso. The less than nimble parent organisation invests into an agile subsidiary with a brief to innovate. The parent then spends its time worrying about how much it's costing, if there's ever going to be a return, and why all these people look so young. Getting Open University product onto the platform was an early priority. So I helped make 16 MOOCs in business and management in 2 years, which was something of a production line. The aim was to produce popular courses with wide appeal because while the learning was free, the business model requires at least some of them to buy certificates of achievement. FutureLearn were closely involved in early course development. At first, in my high-minded way, I found their input a bit instrumental. They seemed obsessed by practical outcomes, rather than, let's say, critical thinking, ethics, or academic skills. Now I've come round to the Barrow Boy's perspective as essential to motivating learners. Our students, even in the classroom, are constantly online and easily distracted. We need to convince them that what we're teaching is worth knowing. So my first ray of MOOClight is that effective teaching has a lot to do with selling. Course descriptions, learning outcomes, even the material itself should underline what's in it for the learner. A second ray of MOOClight comes from what we can see learners doing online. The data encourage a sense of realism about just how long they spend engaging with material. I used to plan for at least 45 minutes of anybody's attention when writing learning material. I now deal in much smaller units. Less is more. Less is, in fact, often the only option, so we need to make more of less. In a FutureLearn MOOC, the solution is to build everything up from the basic building block of a step, described as the smallest unit of learning in the FutureLearn environment. The step is enshrined in FutureLearn's logo, designed by Wolf Olins. That staircase to learning, moving through the pink of experience to the gold of enlightenment, is a key image. It encapsulates progression, a process, a story made up of discrete learning episodes, each of which has a payoff. Steps are single web pages focused on a single point. Here's one from my MOOC on networking. It's a video step featuring practitioners talking about what networking means to them. There's lots of white space, there's a question and somewhere to comment. There's always a progress button for when you're done, as part of the payoff. Steps build into sequences revealing a structure of knowledge. Here's the to-do list view from week 1 of the networking MOOC. It shows how steps work together to create the basic knowledge on which learners will build in their discussions and activities later in the MOOC. There are plenty of navigational aids to help you pick up where you left off. A clear sense of where you are in a topic is essential for MOOC learners, who are likely to engage with the material in short bursts. But the MOOClight effect on my teaching in general has led me to concentrate a lot more on signposting and summarizing than I used to. in response to the easily distracted learner. Another maxim of FutureLearn pedagogy is variety of step types in a sequence. Don't follow a video with another video if you can help it, for example. Mixing it up promotes active learning. This seems so obvious, but it can be easy to overlook. I now pay more attention to variety in user experience in my teaching. Whereas other MOOC platforms have favoured video lectures, FutureLearn differentiates itself through social learning. In other words, the power of conversation to get people to share their experiences and learn from each other. I'm sure we all recognise this from our experience of both online and face-to-face teaching. But seeing it in MOOCs, what strikes me is the diversity of what learners bring to the table. It's made me more aware of different levels of engagement and motivations. I realise that my own expectations as an educator assume that students are engaged in the pursuit of formal qualifications and will behave accordingly. But because MOOCs are still in large part irrelevant to formal qualifications, this is not necessarily the case with MOOC learners. People study MOOCs on their own terms. What looks like minimal participation may in fact be valuable learning for that individual, perhaps the nugget of knowledge they were seeking, or confirmation of the need to keep looking. So my final ray of MOOClight is that, even in formal education, learners may have motivations of which we're not aware, and about which we should be curious, even if they challenge our assumptions. Meeting students on their own terms for what we have to offer might engage more people in more effective learning more of the time. In conclusion, let me reiterate my 5 rays of MOOClight. To teach is to sell, less is more, signposting pays, vary activities and cultivate curiosity. As I mentioned at the outset, this has been a personal account of how working on MOOCs has affected my approach to teaching, learning and student experience. But I hope at least some of it has a glimmer of relevance to you as well.